The Daddy Letters. Letter 2. The History of Dating.
Dear daughters, I want to equip my unmarried daughters to use dating properly and avoid mistakes that create unnecessary emotional baggage you drag into marriage. I want to equip my married daughters to assess benefits that can be maximized and emotional damage that might need to be remedied, stemming from former dating practices. I will start with a brief history of dating customs. A date is a planned activity that brings males and females together socially for the purpose of initiating and exploring the possibilities of a deeper relationship. It is a sort of job interview where the job is the relationship, and each party assesses how well the other meets their needs before giving them the job of co-managing the relationship. Unfortunately, in today's culture, a date is most often an interview for sexual activity, romance and fun, and intoxicating attraction is sufficient grounds for entering a long-term relationship. Today, having sex is even deemed an appropriate and effective way to get to know each other, a kind of try it before you buy it philosophy. In Christian circles, dating is appropriately viewed as an interview for marriage, and sex is reserved until after the marriage, where it serves to consummate or seal the marital union, and provide the ultimate ongoing bonding experience. Daughters, I urge you to be clear up front with men about your purpose in dating and establish sexual boundaries. Do this and you will discover whether your suitor values you for who you are, or if he values the sexual delicacies you might provide him more. Please be aware, men will often reluctantly consent to your boundaries and then employ seductive practices to heighten your sexual desire to the point where you break your own boundaries. Tricksters know that the best way to take something from a person is to make the person want to give it to you. The Bible warns that the heart is deceitful above all things, and pleasure-seeking, narcissistic men know how to manipulate your heart and make your heart say yes, while your spirit is saying no. Be on guard to preserve yourself as the pearl of great value reserved only for a deserving man. Our current promiscuous dating custom has existed only a few decades. In Bible times, you find the norm was for there to be negotiations for arranging marriage. These negotiations were typically conducted by members of the two families involved, or their deputies. Sometimes the desires of the prospective couple were considered, but usually not. When the arranged marriage was finally agreed upon, it was definite and binding upon both groom and bride, and they were considered man and wife in all legal and religious aspects, except that of actual cohabitation and sex, which could be delayed for short or long periods of time, even years. This period of delay came to be known as the betrothal, or in modern parlance, the engagement period. However, these terms are not found in Scripture. It is important to note that even though marriages were arranged without the couples dating or falling in love, God still required these married strangers to love one another, which reveals that marital love is largely a sober decision first, and then romance and sex follow as beautiful tools God gives the couple to bond and grow together over time. Biblical law expected the woman to be a virgin unless previously married, and the penalties for noncompliance were stiff. Though God's law required the same purity of men, the culture gave men more sexual freedom. A definite double standard existed, and to some extent, still does. The biblical expectation of purity is a stark contrast to our modern society, where virginity is considered a freakish abnormality, and sex and living together before marriage are not only acceptable but largely expected. Male-female relationships continued to evolve post-Bible era, but before the 1900s, dating and courtship remained synonymous. You didn't go on dates to find someone you had an amazing connection with or attraction to, you dated to find someone respectable to marry. Women tried to court a man who wouldn't waste her inheritance, because until 1870 women couldn't keep property, money or goods they inherited upon marriage, but had to give everything to the person they married. Also, in England for example, divorces could only be granted by the king, so unless you were very well connected, it was vital that you married someone you could live with till death parted you. For these and other reasons, courting was more cerebral than emotional. Though love and attraction were sometimes a factor, there was still a prevailing theme of parents and their children choosing a good economic and social marital fit. Considering today's high divorce rate, it makes one wonder if those old mores were wiser than we think in comparison to today's customs. The rules around courtship were incredibly strict to protect the couple from themselves, and the passion-driven insanity that goes with infatuation and attraction. Most courting took place in the woman's home. It was considered inappropriate for unmarried singles to put themselves in private situations where improper touching or fornication could easily ensue. Chaperones, usually a family member, were required to accompany couples on dates to provide the couple an added layer of protection against sexual temptations. Chaperoning also preserved appearances and protected couples from public perceptions of impropriety. Things changed during World War I because women started working outside the home under less moral and physical protection. Women started traveling on trains by themselves, which became a place they met men away from chaperones and moral supervision. In the 1920s, dating entered the stage of going out. Young people became more independent from their parents and unsupervised adolescent dating was allowed. Kissing and limited physical contact became acceptable at the end of dates. Daters went dancing, to amusement parks, and movie theaters most often. Dating multiple people became a new trend during that period. Dating moved past the chaste kiss and became more and more about sex. By the 1940s, the automobile made it possible for couples to date far away from home, and the new practice of parking was soon in full swing. The automobile became a portable private space for couples to engage in intimacy. Many couples disposed of their virginity on the seats of automobiles. After World War II, it became popular to ask girls out over the telephone. The telephone was the next big technological innovation, second to the automobile, that was used to enhance dating practices. Young people talked a lot on the phone to get to know each other better, and a whole telephone dating etiquette arose, such as calling after the first date. Men were always expected to pay for dates, and it was considered too forward and immodest for women to pay. After all, a woman who was willing to pay for a date might be willing to surrender her intimate valuables as well. The burden was mostly upon women to control sexual boundaries during dates. Men were expected to be the aggressive pursuers, and women the reserved pursued. The concept of free love reached its peak in the 1970s. Women became more emancipated and more into experimenting sexually, made possible by the introduction of oral contraceptives that became available in the 1960s. Soon, with sexual taboos relaxed, birth control improved, and economic independence won, women entered a new age of sexual freedom and promiscuity. Slowly it became acceptable for women to actively pursue men relationally and sexually. Modernists considered this new acceptance of gratuitous sex a victory for women's freedom. However, daughters, God has not changed his expectations. The 1990s saw dating turned into hooking up. No strings attached relationships allowed men and women to be active and equal players on the dating field, and sex was at the center of their attention. Speed dating came on the scene in 1998, owing to the emerging belief that the more partners you date, the better chance you have of finding your soulmate, or the best match for you sexually and otherwise. The philosophy for mate selection in today's dating culture says, 1. We must experience an overwhelming physical and emotional attraction. 2. Marriage must be a union consecrated by feelings and desire. 3. Couples should be left on their own to discover how they feel and who is good for them. 4. Money and social status are unromantic and of little importance in falling in love. 5. You are meant to be irresistibly emotionally drawn to someone for a relationship to be deemed legitimate and viable in the long term. 6. Sex is a central part of getting to know someone. 7. You must experience a lot of dates and sex on the way to selecting the best mate. 8. If you select a mate, you should cohabitate for a trial period before deciding to legalize the relationship. And 9. Virginity is not important and prevents couples from really getting to know each other. These are a few. The internet with its dating apps, email, and social media sites has joined the phone as a new way to meet and get to know dates. Historian Stephanie Kuntz said, "Within the past 40 years, marriage has changed more than in the last 5,000. By 2009, a 50% divorce rate within 15 years of marriage began to cause social leaders to question whether we get the worst marital outcomes when the intense emotional and sexual happiness of couples is considered most important in mate selection. The Bible does not tell men and women how to date, but its enduring principles do provide guidelines from which we may discern how Christians should behave on dates. Some of these principles to guide you on your dates are: behave with honor, respect, chastity, modesty, righteousness, faith, decency, and propriety. Judge your dates by their commitment to God's defined roles for males and females, how well their worldview matches the Christian worldview, and how equally you are yoked in terms of beliefs and practices. Evaluate your compatibility of life goals, family values, and the ability to communicate. It is very helpful to increase your knowledge of the opposite sex, so you learn how to best manage your dating and marriage relationships. Also, learn about human nature and how it will affect your dating and marriage. These are not exhaustive but representative of Christian dating. God expects your man to become the leader of your home when you marry, therefore, evaluate his leadership while dating. He is to dwell with his wife according to knowledge, so test how much he knows about the needs of a wife and how willing he is to continue to learn. He will become the high priest of your home, so observe how priestly he behaves while dating. Does he help you to become a better you? You will realize your full feminine potential if you are married to a complete man, well developed in body, mind, and spirit. Assess his level of manhood. I will talk more about manhood in a future letter. He is to be the protector of the home, so how much of a warrior is he prepared to be? He is to put your needs ahead of his own, behave sacrificially, Control his tongue, disagree without becoming disagreeable, exhibit problem-solving and creative thinking abilities. He is to understand who God is, and what it is to be a servant leader. Although the dating custom of this culture seem enlightened, free, fun, and normal, I pray you will reject it because it is designed by the enemy to wreck morals, futures, and relationship with God. Not only are your own desires an obstacle to wise dating, but you also have invisible powers trying to sabotage you. If one of my unmarried daughters has fallen victim to the culture, repent and dare to be different in the future. The rewards are greater than you can imagine. To my married daughters, if you violated Christian dating principles before marriage, know that God forgives, but prayerfully consider how it might have diminished the intimacy in your marriage and do the work to recover. This is enough for now. I will continue with more thoughts on this subject in my future letters, where I will talk about what a man is, what love really means, the true meaning of romance, and a few other goodies. Meanwhile, don't forget, I love a great apple pie. I have ice cream that needs some company. Love, Dad.